I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Angela.
We are the Ink Mages. Join us as we discuss all things fantasy, world building, storycraft, myths and legends, and of course, our own imaginative stories. Welcome to the Ink Mages podcast. We're so excited that you have joined us today. And as you can see by the background, it is Christmas time. So we wanted to do a special holiday episode where we talk about our favorite Christmas holiday traditions, our favorite Christmas movies. And we're going to be highlighting one of my favorite Christmas movies, which is The Man Who Invented Christmas. So if you have not seen this movie, this is your spoiler warning. You need to go see it and then come back and watch this episode. So Angela, before we dive into talking about the movie, tell us a little bit about some of your favorite Christmas traditions, what you love about Christmas time.
Well, I love Christmas. I'm definitely one of those people that Christmas just throws up in my house. I get all of the decorations out. Right now I've got 2 Christmas trees in my house, and I'm that kind of mom that likes to bake anyway, but during Christmas season, I turn into that Pinterest mom that's got to bake like the gingerbread cookies and decorate them, and every pie and homemade cinnamon roll that you can imagine is going to start cooking in my kitchen because I like to smell Christmas. So I like to smell the cinnamon, and I like to have baked things out on the counter. One of my life goals is so funny. This is so, I don't know, maybe just Susie homemaker of me, but one of my goals in life is to become that grandma that has cookies fresh baked every time my kids come home or they bring their, I don't know. It's important to me. I love that as a kid, going to my grandma's house and having cookies. So during the holidays, I do a lot of baking, definitely a lot of decorating, lots of Christmas music. I do wait, though. I'm not the type of person that starts playing Christmas music in November. Not one of those. I'll get sick of it really, really fast. I wait
Unless
till
I'm
Thanksgiving.
decorating. Unless I
Yes.
start decorating in November, then I can
Yeah.
justify putting some
Yes.
Christmas music on.
Yes. I don't know. It's for me because I do love Christmas music, but I do get sick of it. By January 1st, I'm like getting rid of all of the decorations. I'm stopping the music. I'm over it. But during right after Thanksgiving, it's got to be Christmas and Christmas music. I'm getting festive. And particularly, me and the kids love to watch our Christmas movies. And I have a whole lineup of movies that we have to watch every year that include, Home Alone and Elf and all of those fun ones. But I have to say that one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time is The Snowman. It's a little known one. I thought everyone knew of The Snowman and that everybody watched it. And it turns out, unless you were like, really paying attention in the early 80s, you might have missed The Snowman. But it is this cartoon that came out, and it actually won awards, I think Academy Awards, when it came out. And it's an animated, there's really no words in it. It's a very short animated cartoon with the most beautiful music ever. And it's about a little boy who builds a snowman, and at night the snowman comes to life and takes him on this magical journey to meet all of the snowmen that have come to life at night.
What?
And it's so beautiful. And the music, I remember as a kid, it would give me goosebumps just listening to the music, because it's all just set to music. It's almost like there's no dancing, but it's like a ballet or something where you're hearing the music and they're miming, and it's a little sad. I tried to get my kids to watch it because it's my favorite. Just listening to The Snowman is one of my favorite things. So if you haven't checked out The Snowman, you absolutely should, just to even hear the music. It's so beautiful. But it kind of has a little bit of a sad ending. And so, my kids are like, "Mom, why don't you make us watch?" And I'm like, "No, it's beautiful. It's okay. It's The Snowman."
Okay, so that makes me think of my love for The Little Drummer Boy, that cartoon, because it's a sad story too.
Yeah.
But the ending is bittersweet.
Yes.
Because
that's it. Bittersweet.
Bittersweet, because at the end he finds that he gets to play his drum at the birth of Jesus. But at the beginning of the story, I believe his parents get murdered. Something I think
Yeah.
it's very
Very tragic. Very
it's been a
tragic.
long time since I watched it, but I loved that one because of also the music. It's very haunting. The song of the Little Drummer Boy is one of my favorite Christmas songs right there. Yeah. So I'll have to check out The Snowman because I've not heard of it.
You definitely should. You would love it. It really is a beautiful story. Again, the end is bittersweet. I think that would be a better way to put it. It's not like it's leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. It's just such a beautiful cartoon. It's beautifully animated and worth the watch. So you should be able to find it probably fairly easily on
I'll have to check on Amazon or even YouTube. Sometimes you can watch full movies, shorts on YouTube.
Now I want to watch it because I haven't watched it this year. Maybe I can force my children to watch it again. Maybe they'll like it better this year. So, what are some of your favorite Christmas things about Christmas and the holidays?
Well, I love decorating. So I used to work at a decor store, so I learned how to decorate halls, trees, everything. So I really look forward to Christmas time because I do the same thing. I have 3 trees, like one big one and then 2 little ones. But this year, our heat is still out in our house. So I've not gone the 9 yards at all. I literally just put up a small tree on a little tabletop and then put up my nerdy superhero Star Wars tree in my son's room. And that's it.
That's epic. I've seen your nerdy tree and it is inspired. I'm like, one of these days I want to have a Christmas tree that has just all of the things that I love, like Doctor Who and Star Wars.
You can justify by getting just a small tabletop tree.
There you go. Yeah. Starting small. I have vision of big, but you're right. Starting small is probably the right way to go.
Because otherwise you have to store all these big trees. And I'm like, nope, I can only justify one 7.5-foot tree. The rest, small. So other favorite traditions, I like to bake too. So we have been baking shortbread cookies my whole life. So we have a special recipe that we use. And that's what I love doing is baking the shortbread cookies, decorating them. Used to do it as a kid. So now me and my kids now do it. So it's super fun, especially with festive music.
Yes, there is. I have to do everything holiday. If I'm wrapping presents, if I'm baking, there's either a Christmas movie playing in the background or there is Christmas music happening.
So let's see, a favorite Christmas movie. My favorite Christmas movie is The Man Who Invented Christmas. So we will get there. But I grew up watching A Muppets Christmas Carol. Yeah. I am going to say that is my favorite movie of A Christmas Carol adaptation, probably because it was just the one I grew up on. I think I saw like an old black and white one and it freaked me so bad. I was like, no, just the carriage like riding up to the house was like, that's it. Nope, I'm done. I'm out.
Yes, yeah. It's so funny because it is actually a ghost story.
It is, there's spirits, there's ghosts, and even the Muppet one, I know it definitely scared my sister Liz when the Marley and Marley show up with their chains. It was the sound, sound, music, effects, they play a huge part. And so just the rattling of the chains still is pretty creepy, So
I have to say that was one of my favorite going back, when I was a kid, my favorite adaptation of the Christmas Carol was the Mickey Christmas Carol, the older one.
That's number 2. That comes in second.
Yes, yeah. And the Goofy scene where he comes in, my kids they used to hit the deck. They're like, I'm out. I'm watching this part. Once Goofy leaves, the Marley ghost, then we'll come back in. It'll be good.
Oh, I know. The Ghost of the Future. He's always so scary. I don't think he ever talks. That's the whole point. Never really talks.
Super creepy.
Scrooge has to kind of decipher what he's being shown because his guide is not telling him.
Yes. My son and I watched he's always been a little sensitive when it comes to movies. So this is the first year we watched Scrooged with Bill Murray. 80s classic.
Oh,
And
okay.
the part with the Ghost of Christmas Future was a little iffy. I'm like, it's okay, it's just effects. He was all freaked out. He's like, oh my God. That's a good classic if you haven't seen that one.
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, it's fun. I mean,
So,
if you like Bill Murray and 80s comedy, you'll like it.
okay. Oh, okay. So it's like a comedic take on
Hmm.
it.
Oh
How
yeah,
funny.
yeah, definitely funny. He's instead of so it's modern day, and he's like a TV executive boss
Oh,
honcho,
okay.
and he's trying to ruin the Christmas Carol that's being filmed. And these ghosts start to visit him, and it's great. It's great. I mean, it's Bill Murray, so I mean, props right there, 5 stars. Bill Murray.
Okay, so I need to make a little Christmas list
Yeah.
of movies I need to tackle. All right. Well, let's dive into The Man Who Invented Christmas. So, just a little bit about it. It follows Charles Dickens as he is coming off 3 flops that he has written beforehand. So he's kind of in a very stuck place. Like writer's block has set in. His creativity is shot at the moment. So he is seeking inspiration. And he happens to listen in as a little, I think, maidservant who's Irish is telling a story about spirits coming out around Christmas time. She says something about how the veil at Christmas is like
And
disappears and
mhm.
spirits can walk in the real world. And that just clicks in his imagination. And he starts writing this story of a Christmas carol. And the movie just follows his path doing this, and it tackles his struggles of coming up with the characters, relation like the struggles he's having with his relationships and his family, his father. Because as a writer, sometimes we get so into our own space, like there's a madness that comes on us when we are
Yes.
writing our story, and so we can neglect or treat people around us not always the best because it's like, gosh, I'm working, like, leave me alone. And that's not how we want to handle it. But it shows how Charles Dickens is just going through all of this chaos to try to write a Christmas Carol in 6 weeks
My
because
gosh,
the
can you imagine the
publisher is
pressure?
like, I know, like, oh, you're just going to write, one of the most well-known books in the world in 6 weeks and get it illustrated. So it's amazing. It's a great film. Highly recommend that you go watch it. A wonderful addition to it is that Christopher Plummer plays Scrooge. And I've been a big
Yes.
Christopher Plummer fan my whole life because of The Sound of Music. So
Wow.
you want to see him play a very grumpy old man saying bah humbug? Yeah, watch this film.
Well, and I feel like
So yeah,
as writers, it's you can't not watch this movie. If you are an author or a writer in any way, this movie is probably one of the best examples of what it feels like to be inside the head of a writer from any I've ever watched. I mean, I had never seen it. It had come out, had been out for a few years. And it was actually Stephanie who was like, Angela, you gotta watch this movie. And so I watched it for the first time with her a few years back. And now it's definitely on my top 10 list of favorite, actually, movies that I've seen, not just Christmas movies.
there's so much takeaway, and it's a film I put on whenever I am experiencing like writer's block or getting
Mm,
stuck because it helps to know that someone as great as Charles Dickens, who wrote so many books, so many stories, he had his struggles too. And I recently have been kind of stuck with my ending. And there's a part in the book where Charles Dickens is stuck and he's like
yes.
distraught, stuck. Like he's like, my ending, I can't figure it out. I feel like if I can't finish this book, then I'll never write again. And it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
talk about just being so dramatic. But recently I was feeling stuck, so I was like, I'm going to throw this movie on because oftentimes that's what I do. I'll put on a movie that has to do with about a writer, and it kind of helps get my that creative juices flowing again. So just last week I put it on, and I think midway through the film, like just as he's talking about storycraft and characters, I was like, oh gosh, I need my laptop open. So I just start kind of writing as it's going on in the background and like trying to get in the head of a new character. And it really helped. I was like,
Yeah.
yes, I don't know how, but afterwards I had written like 1,200 words. I'm like, yes.
Wow.
It's like like I broke through, and it helped having, you know, the champion on the screen doing it as well.
I think that's a really brilliant thing to do anyway. I don't know how many times I've been stuck writing or I can't figure out how to write a scene, and just watching a movie or another good story just kind of unlocks and inspires. I used to be a ballerina, and I remember, most of my life as a ballet dancer. So I would spend 6 days a week, 5 to 6 hours a day. I danced with a professional company. So it was very serious dancing. It was like, very rigid discipline dancing. And I remember as a dancer, when I would go and watch movies about dancers, I would be so inspired to get back on the stage, and it made it kind of worth all of the hard work that I was putting in as a athlete. When I would watch these movies, I don't know what it is about watching a movie of someone who is doing what you do. It inspires you and kind of unlocks, or even
Mm-hmm.
stories that are like what you are writing. It unlocks something that makes you remember your passion, and it kind of helps get things moving, kind of oils the gears.
Yes, for sure. And inspiration is so key. And this story, especially this adaptation, has inspired a lot of things. Like it definitely has helped get me unstuck. But I remember when I was writing The Conjurer's Curse, there is a mantra that Charles Dickens' father says to him as a boy. It is when his family is going to get taken and put in like the debtor's prison,
Hmm.
and little Charles is going to be sent to the workhouse. And the father says, like, blood of iron, heart of ice. And I thought, dude, like, that's, I mean, that's a tough mantra, but he's telling his boy, like, you got to be strong as you go
Wow.
and work in the workhouse. And I remember talking to my sister Liz, and it was probably like, because I was writing The Conjurer's Curse in January. So we were in the winter season. And I said, I want to have a mantra in my book like that. Obviously, not so harsh,
Yeah.
but something that Rowan's guardian mother would tell him.
Wow.
And so, just because of like saying that line out loud, her and I went back and forth a couple of times, and then we had it like still water, steady heart, because we needed
Wow.
something that was appropriate for my story and appropriate to the culture in Caravel, this tribal village, and water plays a huge significance. And so that was it. Still water, steady heart, and see the beast as an equal and be fearless in your strike. So
I love knowing that, especially because that is such a powerful mantra in your books. When you read those stories, like that stands out. It's something that that is like that motivating phrase throughout Rowan's journey, and it even begins to become Tahira's mantra, and it's
yes,
it's something that really is embedded in who he is. And to know that that was inspired by the man who invented Christmas, that's kind of
that
fantastic.
the movie does a great job of showing how, as a writer, to get into a character's mindset. So one thing that's super funny about the movie is that Charles Dickens will have full-on conversations with his characters. So
Yes.
yeah,
That is exactly what I was gonna say, is that's
perfect.
probably one of my favorite things about the film, is that his characters actually begin to haunt him like the ghosts haunt Scrooge
Yes.
in his book. And what I loved about that is that that's kind of really what happens. I mean, when you're writing a story, your characters, they're in your head, they're in your mind, they're speaking lines to you, they're showing you their personality. You go to bed at night and you close your eyes and you're imagining what your characters would do and say. And then there's that tipping point, like you said, the writer's madness, where the characters kind of take the story away from you and they start telling you
Mm-hmm.
how things are going to go. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about this movie, is not only does that not happen, that does happen to writers, but it shows us that sometimes as writers, which is what's so deep about this film, we have to deal with our demons sometimes to write a powerful
Mm,
story, and that our characters sometimes
yes.
can be the aggressive, um, almost catalyst to get us to deal with certain things so that we can write a story that has power and gives wings and might actually have something for the reader to take away that will be powerful for them also. And I love how that's depicted because there's all these little story elements that you see in the Man Who Invented Christmas that inspired his story. But you start to kind of see these little things where he still has hurts and bitternesses and
Mhm.
unforgivenesses that he has refused to deal with. And the character Scrooge, which is so amazing, is the catalyst that says, yeah, you're the monster because you haven't dealt with this and I'm your monster.
Right.
And it's
Yes.
just absolutely, I remember watching it for the first time and I'm like, this is absolutely 100% my experience when I was writing the Once and Future Chronicles because my character Eleanor was falling really flat. And part of the reason she was falling so flat was because of areas of fear that I was unwilling to deal with in my own life. And it was making her this character that just couldn't come to life because she wasn't exposing even the darkness that was in her own heart. And I went, wow, I need to look at myself a little more deeply. And so writing can be a tool of discovery for the writer,
Yes.
something that actually not just transforms into a story, but transforms the writer themselves into people that have a greater level of healing and wisdom because they let their story take them there. It can also be a vessel, writing can be a vessel that takes you deeper into darkness, depending on where you want to go with it. Um,
Yes.
the art has the tendency to do either one, either bring you to light and revelation or bring you into a deeper pit of darkness. So, as a writer, it's an important thing to know. But I love how The Man Who Invented Christmas, it did that so brilliantly. I remember as I was watching the movie, my jaw just kind of dropped. I was like, this is so fantastically capturing what it is to be a storyteller.
Yes, and I think that's what makes our stories so powerful. Like there can be certain scenes that just really impact and hit the reader hard because it was something that we dealt with in real life. And so we
Yes.
translated it to the page. We faced our demons, we faced our darkness, we faced the weakness that we've been carrying and we're like, all right, I'm going to expose this and through this character I'm going to break free and have freedom. And I know I've experienced that with you've experienced that with Eleanor. I experienced it with my character Serene, which is in my adult fantasy series. Basically, her entire journey and arc was chronicling my like 10-year abusive
Mhm.
relationship with my ex. And so I had kind of put up this distant wall when I was writing her that like she's not me. Are you kidding me? No, no.
Right.
She's closed off to her emotions. She's just a very miserable and happy person, even though she's very driven. And it wasn't until like I got to book 5 and like this little voice inside my head said, no,
Mhm.
you're Serene and you need to admit it to yourself because you can't
Wow.
actually break free from these lies that you've believed about yourself, just like her, until you accept it. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
So like when I did, I wasn't able to bring freedom to my character. And in doing that, it's like, wow, the door opened for me to really find freedom for myself. And it was like, wow, I broke free. Now I feel empowered that I can go do whatever now because I'm not like living under this shroud of fear and thinking I'm not good enough and that I have no
Right.
value. So it's like, wow, through her arc, 5 books, I didn't know that until I got, to a place of transformation for her. So it is crazy and amazing when you let yourself dive very deep into a character and like I'm going to expose my own
Yes.
stuff. And I think you will create a character that people are going to love and that readers are going to have their own transformation and breakthrough experience with that character. So definitely have the courage to go there.
Well, and vulnerable writers make the best storytellers. If you're really closed off emotionally, it's going to translate on the page exactly that way. And I think it was a lesson that I learned as a writer, kind of an immature writer, and then exploring the world of what it was to write a whole story was that there was this weird denial like, oh, I'm not these characters, I'm just writing these characters and they're somebody else, and then all of a sudden coming to the realization, no, all of my characters are me. Every single one of them are through my perspective and through my experience of the world and what I see, and so all of my characters are an echo of who I am and my experience and how I see the world. And that was a really powerful thing to like help me write a good character, was recognizing, yeah, they all have an element of my life experience. They're all in the jumble. They're all a piece of me. And to deny that is to keep the character from coming to life on the page, which I just think is super fun. I mean, you can get your characters inspired from all different places, but the bottom line is it's still coming through your vision and your experience and how you experienced those inspirations. And that can really light you up. And you see, so Charles Dickens going through this in the movie, just going, him kind of trying to really put himself in and stay inside the box that he was in, was causing him to have writer's block and to make this experience of writing the Christmas Carol this really painful, agonizing thing that was kind of turning him into a beast. And it wasn't until he kind of had to punch down those walls that he created for himself that he starts writing this beautiful, fantastic story. And I love, at the one point, he has the Irish girl read his stories and she struggles with it. And he doesn't like that she's struggling with his story.
It's why we need feedback, because it's funny when you've written something and you're so proud of what you've written, and then you give it to someone and she's like, what? You can't have like Tiny Tim die. And he's like, why not? Like, Scrooge is a bad guy. Of course he's going to let that little guy die. And she's like, you can't do that. Like, that would defeat the purpose of the story. And it's like, what? Which again, great. Now it just like your story falls apart. You hear that and you're thinking, where do I go? What do I do? Yes. But that can be a challenging moment that like, maybe I need to step back and like, okay. And he had a friend, his best friend, and then this girl who gave him great insight of like, let's go into the character. Like, what makes Scrooge, a bad person? Because in Charles Dickens' mind, it's like, oh, he's evil. And his friend's like, well, what makes him evil? And Charles is like, well, he's a miser. And his friend says, well, that doesn't make him evil. It's like, okay, so then like, what's he afraid of? It's like, once we ask those questions, about our character, more and more, we get more and more depth. We get more and more layers. And I recently had to do that with my villain. I was like pulling my hair out because I'm like, what is driving this guy? Like, what's he afraid of? What drives him? What compels him? What's his goal? And we need we need answers to those questions, or you will feel like, my story is not working. I'm going nowhere because we don't know our character motivations. So it's good to be able to brainstorm with people and then prepare yourself for some feedback that might require you to make some big changes. I think one of my favorite parts in the movie is when Scrooge like comes to him. So he's being haunted by his characters, and Scrooge comes to him and is like, I happen to notice that my character is not being represented correctly, or the way I feel like it should be. So I have gone ahead and written some notes that I think would make my intentions come across clearer. And Charles is like, what is wrong with you? I'm the author here. And Scrooge is like, allegedly, So it's so funny the way he interacts with his characters. But why I love that moment so much, first off, it's funny, but I kind of had that experience too, not too long ago, when I was purposely putting off a chapter I needed to write with my villain. And then I think I had like read through one of his scenes and I was thinking, oh God, this guy means business. He's so going to kill somebody. And I'm just like, not ready for this. I'm not ready to get into his headspace. Didn't matter. The character came in and was like, I noticed you're putting off my scene. So I'm going to help you. Seriously. It's like, so imagine it. I'm strolling down the street. Everybody's terrified of me. And I'm going to just wreak some havoc. Then I'm going to march up to this guy. I'm going to ask him some questions. And then I'm going to put the beat down on him. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I think we discussed we were going to do this. And he's like, when someone says that to me, they're dead. I was like, okay. Wow. I was like, you're right. You don't mince words. You don't just make a threat. you don't make idle threats. If you say something, you're going to do it. And it's like, oh, this changes what I had planned. And he's like, I don't care. It's what's happening. Write it. So I think I got in the car and it was just back and forth, back and forth. The dialogue was coming. And I was like, oh, I need to get this down.
Yes, let's go.
It was crazy. I haven't had that happen again. Thank God. Because I don't really like that guy's his point of view in my head for very long, because he's very violent. So, but it's just awesome how that scene in the movie is very similar to something that I experienced too. So
So if anything, watching The Man Who Invented Christmas should give every writer kind of a, oh, okay, this is normal for,
Yes.
for writers to experience their characters coming so vividly alive and taking a hold of your story. And it's kind of magical. And I think that's what's, I've said this a few times on the podcast already, but one of my favorite things about writing is that it is kind of a magical experience where you're discovering these characters, and they really do take you on a ride. I love how in the story that Charles Dickens displays his determination. So he starts out, the publishers want something, he wants to do it his own way. The publishers want to do it their way. And finally he says, I'm going to do this on my own. And he branches out and he decides he's going to write this book and he's going to do it in 6 weeks and he's going to get this all done. And
he's going to finance it himself.
Yes, which was a huge, already you're feeling like the pinch because you're like, okay, does his wife know about this? Is this going to cause some like marital issues? Like what's going to happen here with him taking this risk? But this is what I love about it is I think as authors, you do have to be determined and you do have to be a risk taker. And I don't know how many times in this journey as a writer where it's like, oh, I have to take another leap. I have to take another risk. It's like those opportunities to take a risk never stop coming because there's so many times where you have to just take a leap and go, okay, I am going to write this part. I am going to expose this part of my heart. I am going to go ahead and publish this way. I think those questions, am I going to self-publish? I'm going to publish. Or if you get with a publisher that you really love, but they're asking you to do something that wasn't in the cards originally, but it's the right thing to do. Or maybe you're with a publisher who is taking your story in a way that it's not supposed to go. And then you have to make another hard choice about your book and how it's going to go and what's really important when it comes to your story being released in the world. And I think this is the wrestling match that a lot of writers have. If the stories come to you, my belief is then it's important for it to be written and it's important for it to be published. And it's not meant to sit on your computer for 20, 30 years and never come out into the world. So what kind of decisions, what kind of risks do we need to make to ensure that our story gets out there and gets out there the way that it's meant to? But then, in the story, he just leaps out there and he doesn't even know what he's going to write, but he's going to publish and he's going to get it done in 6 weeks. Total insanity. Would never do that to myself.
Total insanity. I think last Christmas, we watched it as a family. So it was the first time for my husband and my kids. My daughter loved it, but my husband's like, that guy is absolutely insane.
Yes.
He's like, he's insane. Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some questionable decisions that he made, but I think over time, as my husband, he takes time to like ruminate about things that he then kind of caught on and realized, Stephanie is in writer mode right now. Even though we're on a walk in the countryside, he can just tell that like my brain is going, it's thinking, it's imagining, and he just kind of lets me do my thing. So, it's kind of now become a thing where I just say, yeah, I'm kind of in writer mode. So that way I don't pull doing something very rude or getting upset for something just because there's like a noise in the house. Like we've learned that the creative process, I can go somewhere else. I can put headphones on, music, and get into the zone. So it's nice when like your family respects like what you do. And I make time for them, of course. And then
Right.
it's like, all right, I spent some time. Now I'm going to go to my room for an hour. I put on the music and dive in.
Get into that writer's headspace. And it's good to be a passionate writer. It's good to, there's that line between passion and insanity, being eccentric and all of those kinds of things. But it's also, there's a part of that you want to embrace who you are as an author and a writer and as a storyteller, and giving yourself the space to write. And we at the Ink Mages want to wish you a Merry Christmas. And we are so looking forward to the new year. Lots more episodes, lots more interviews coming up soon. Please go watch The Men Who Invented Christmas if you haven't seen it yet, because it will inspire you and it will give you permission to be a writer, which I super love. And we have something special coming up. I'm not going to announce too much about it yet, but we have something coming with giveaways and maybe lives and authors returning onto the Ink Mages. It's in the works. So we just want you to know that something fun is coming. So be ready. And we cannot wait to see you again after the new year and all the new episodes that are going to be flowing through. Please leave us a like. Tell us what your favorite thing is about Christmas, your favorite Christmas movies, maybe your favorite Christmas tradition. We want to hear it. It's fun. And have a very, very Merry Christmas and a happy holiday. And we will see you again next time.